But first, this top story this half an hour. The recovery in Puerto Rico goes on. President Trump addressing the state of recovery on the island nearly 4 months after it was ravaged by Hurricane Maria. He spoke about it during his State of the Union address earlier this week. Watch.
To everyone still recovering in Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, everywhere, we are with you, we love you, and we always will pull through together, always.
Meanwhile, after mixed messages, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, announced that it will not stop supplying provisions to the millions of Americans still recovering from the hurricane devastation in Puerto Rico. Joining us right now is the governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló. Governor, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. First, the state of affairs today in Puerto Rico, please.
Well, this is a long road ahead. Certainly, we've already gotten out of the most severe part of the emergency, but we still have a lot of challenges regarding energy buildup. Food delivery to some of the areas is still important. That's why it was critical for FEMA not to stop some of the delivery supplies. So it's a slow process. It's a long process, but we're hopeful that with the support of the federal government, we'll be able to push through, not only get to the same place we were, but to a much better place than before.
How do the people of Puerto Rico view the federal government's assistance?
I think there's, of course, there's mixed views on FEMA, for example, has gotten good remarks. The Army, when they came to Puerto Rico, was very favorable. The Corps of Engineers has gotten poor marks. It's been a slow process getting the energy back together in Puerto Rico.
Sure.
So there are some good things, some bad things, but the important thing is that if we identify them, we still have time to fix it, and that's when we'll all get evaluated.
Dagan.
Please clear up, though, the news that about FEMA from earlier in the week. It was the day of the State of the Union address that FEMA was going to stop new shipments of water and food to Puerto Rico, and there were a lot of people, regardless of their political affiliation, who were upset about that. But that's actually not the whole story. That there are supplies on the ground that are still being distributed. Can you clarify
Right.
that?
Well, there are two things. Apparently, a story broke out that says it was going to stop. We were very concerned because we already had a protocol. The protocol was as follows. We were going to be talking, FEMA and the central government, to the municipalities and figuring out when the municipalities wanted to stop food and water resources. At that point, when the municipalities say stop, we would have a 2-week transition period. So a protocol was going. Some municipalities have already said, you know, it's time to stop so that we can kickstart our economy. But apparently the story broke out. I called Secretary Nielsen immediately, and she responded very quickly. So I thank her for that. And again, reiterated that food and water was still going to be provided, because although some regions in Puerto Rico are already moving forward, there are certainly some others that need a lot of help.
Governor, so you have the short-term issue here, obviously, and we're all concerned about that. But you have this longer-term issue of how does Puerto Rico rebuild its economy so there's strength and sustainability. That was an issue even before this in many ways. What do you say to that? What are you looking to do in the months and years ahead to make sure you've got a sustainable path forward?
Well, it's a great question, and actually the catastrophe, although it's been a challenge, also presents an opportunity. Why? Because now we can rebuild and think forward and be very transformative. For example, we want a new energy grid, right? We don't want the same old 1950s energy grid that was costly, ineffective, and wasn't given reliable energy sources. I think right now we can leapfrog towards the future and be a model pushing forward. We want a new school system. I know it doesn't sound like it has to do something with the storm, but now as we start consolidating some of the schools, giving kids more access to better education, it's a great opportunity. And I think that one of the critical components over here is going to be how Congress reacts. You know, we've been working with the federal government, but I've been disappointed in the leadership in Congress in terms of the path forward with the supplemental. There is a third supplemental that's being evaluated. The resources that are identified for Puerto Rico at that juncture are going to be critical for our progress. If we have the resources, then we can leapfrog, we can attend to our previous fiscal crisis, and we can have a path forward, just like the rest of the United States.
You want to privatize certain things. I mean, when you look, the electric Authority, the largest U.S. public power provider, could reap as much as $4 billion in assets, you say, and that you want to privatize PREPA. Tell me about that. Do you want to see more private companies come in and acquire some of these, right now, public assets?
Well, it depends on what the objective is. With energy, we want a utilities 2.0 model, right? We want to have consumer choice. We want to have options instead of having an old government-owned monopoly running the show, which hasn't worked. So if we want that, we've established that the best path forward is privatization of generation, having a concession of the transmission and distribution. And I think there are a lot of opportunities, but really, it's not even the assets, because we have old generators. We have 1960s generators that aren't that good. Really, the opportunity is to generate new and cheaper energy for Puerto Rico and for Puerto Ricans, and that's an opportunity for the consumer, and that's an opportunity for the private sector to come in.
Yeah. So you've seen a number of Puerto Ricans leave the country coming to Florida. How is that going to impact your plans to rebuild the economy and move forward?
It is. We're working right now on a fiscal plan that has a strategy. It has a consideration on how the demographics are flowing down. But again, my call is to Congress to act swiftly on this supplemental bill, because if we do have the resources, then I can safely go to those Puerto Ricans that have left and tell them, hey, there's a new opportunity now in Puerto Rico to rebuild better, stronger. All of the changes that we've been speaking about for the last 30 or 40 years, we can actually do them. And we really want to do a lot of structural reforms. We want to do a workforce reform. We want to do a welfare reform. We want to do infrastructure reform, energy reform that we just spoke about. We're talking about tax reform, reducing some of the taxes, because we weren't the past tax reform on the federal level did not apply much to Puerto Rico, so we need to keep our competitive advantage there.
But there's a storyline going into the midterm elections that so many people from Puerto Rico have gone to Florida, and they're living in Florida, and they become voters. And the storyline is this could hurt the Republicans in the midterm. How many people have gone to Florida, and what's your sense of the impact on the election?
Well, I think it can have a big impact and I'm hopeful for it. And I'll tell you why. Right now, Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, and we don't have a vote. We have a second-class citizenship unless we reside on the United States. So all of those U.S. citizens from Puerto Rico that come to Florida can have the opportunity to vote. Now, I think that their vote is up for grabs. In my view, Puerto Rico would have been a battleground state. And what they're hoping for is seeing who has the better message and who helps Puerto Rico. Again, a lot of these people had to leave Puerto Rico, so it's very fresh on their minds what the problems are. And if they see friends of Puerto Rico, they will make sure to help them. And if they see people that oppose Puerto Rico, they will oppose them as well. So what I've been doing in the past couple of weeks is I've been identifying several states. We've gone to Florida. We're going to be here in New York. We're going to go to Pennsylvania and other places to establish a structure where Puerto Ricans and friends of Puerto Rico can organize so that they can vote for those that have been friends. Look, I went to Florida. We had a town hall meeting, and it was great because we had, for example, Senator Nelson, but we also had Governor Scott showing that the important thing was how do we treat U.S. citizens that live in Puerto Rico equally and fairly, and how do we help them get through this through the storm? So if we can get that support and that power, maybe we can have some changes in Congress.
Well, the President mentioned it in the State of the Union.
Yes.
We'll be watching the developments. Governor, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Governor Ricardo Rosselló there. Coming up, not ready for some football, why Super Bowl halftime performer Justin Timberlake says his son will never play the game. Plus, a tenth of the jeans, 10 times the price. A denim waist belt is going viral this morning. How much the questionable new fashion statement will set you back. Back in a minute.